Why hello everybody and welcome to a slightly different style of video, something I'm not used to doing, and that is just a chit chat video. So the new PS Plus premium subscription thing is available now, and I've been holding out on renewing my PS Plus because I knew from day one I wanted to invest in this, but you know, there'll still be a lot of people on the fence, not really sure whether or not this is something that's going to be for them. I'm not here to get into the specifics and the details. I'm just here to tell you about the games that are available through the premium version that I recommend. Games that I've either played in the past on another console or games that I've played recently through the PlayStation, whatever. It's just games that I've enjoyed in the past and I'm looking forward to revisiting. So without further ado, let's just get into it. I've sorted everything out alphabetically. You'll see this. So if you've got a PlayStation 5, I'm not sure how it would look on a PS4 storefront, but on the PlayStation 5 storefront, you want to go over to the PS Plus segment, and once you've subscribed, you can just scroll across this little top bar here, select games, and then sort it by A to Z. And what happens is it just sorts everything, and I mean everything. So we've got a mixture of the remasters, the remakes, the classics, the cloud streaming stuff. It's all bundled in this list. So I'm just going to go through them alphabetically. So there's a lot of stuff here I haven't played. But the first one that pops out here is Arkham. Some of you may remember that I unboxed this a few years back. And while I never actually finished the game, I enjoyed what I played of it. It's got a really cool artistic style. It's, you know, a stealth game. If you're into stealth, this is probably something for you. If you've never played stealth before, then it's a title worth trying out. Next on the list is one that's near and dear to my heart, and that's Asura's Wrath. I played this initially on the 360 many moons ago, in fact a decade ago when it came out, and it sits highly as one of my favourite games ever. I can't really comment on whether or not it performs well. One, this is going to be a cloud streaming game. As you can see over on the far left hand side there, this is one that you would have to stream, and I don't know how reliant that would be depending on one's internet connection, and also I generally don't know how well this game performed on the PS3 to start with. I played it on the 360 and it just about coped with the frame rate. There are some segments throughout the game where it's just intense button mashing, lots of stuff happening on the screen, and I can't comment on the PS3's performance. But the game itself, the story, the style, everything that happens within the game, I 100% recommend, and I love it. Next up, we have 4 Atelier games to choose from. Why this 4? I really couldn't say. I would recommend all 4 of them, but if I had to just pick one out of the 4 that are sat here, I would say Verona Plus, which is this one over here. Again, this is another PS3 version that you have to stream as opposed to download. The only reason I recommend Verona Plus is because this is the first game in the Ireland series within the franchise, and this is the best version, or rather this is the extended version. It's not the DX, it's not the PS4 DX version, which in itself was also available on the Vita. This is where it gets really confusing. This is so it's not even the original version of the game, but it is the complete package, if that makes sense. So out of the 4 Atelier games, that's the one I recommend. But if you want to try all of them, I'm not going to stop you. Next, we've actually got 2 Batman games here. But the one that I like the most out of the 2 was actually Arkham Origins. Again, this is another PS3 stream. Unfortunately, a lot of so far the ones that I've mentioned, the PS3 streaming versions, are going to be exclusive to the premium tier. So I can't even say that people on Extra will be able to get a hold of this, but I might be wrong. I haven't done my research that in depth. But yeah, Batman Arkham Origins, that is the prequel to the whole kit bang and caboodle. And while some people had beef with it because it was developed by a different team of people, I still enjoyed it. I still had a good time. It was just more of an excuse to have Batman chasing the Joker around. So why not? On here we've also got Beyond Two Souls. Now this is the PS4 version. I don't actually recall if the first one came out on PS3 or PS4, but whether or not this is some sort of so you've got two choices. You can stream it as part of the premium subscription perk, or you can download it. Why there's two options there, I'm not entirely sure, but I do like the Beyond Two Souls game. I think I've mentioned before that I like it. Without really going into too much detail, it's another choose your own adventure, branching path style of game, much like Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human and some of the Supermassive games. But yeah, it's a cool sci-fi story, so I think I really need to really explain why I like it. So it really goes into the paranormal sci-fi kind of realm, and I think it's just done particularly well. Let's see. We've got Bloodborne here. I really don't think I need to go into too much detail. Bloodborne is a game that if you haven't played it by now, so for whatever reason, if maybe you just didn't have a PlayStation, this is your first PlayStation console, or you've just subscribed to PS Plus for the first time or something, and you haven't played it, then yeah, it's there. Play it. Why not? The same can be said for Borderlands, the Handsome Collection. I just think the Borderlands games in general are really fun, but specifically Borderlands 2 hits a sweet spot. I think a lot of people will tell you it's their favourite one. I might be wrong in saying that, but I can't imagine many people having anything bad to say about Borderlands 2 specifically. But the Handsome Collection includes 2, as well as oh crumbs, I've forgotten the name of the other one. The one that takes on the moon, the pre-sequel, yeah. But 2's the one that I recommend out of them both. Next up we've got Bulletstorm. So this is another one that you can actually download. This is the PS4 full clip edition. So this is effectively a remaster. It originally came out on the PS3 and Xbox 360, and then they did the whole remaster thing, and that's the version you will get with this subscription. One thing I will say, there is some very questionable choices with regards to which versions of some of the games you're getting with this subscription. But like I say, I'm not really going to get into the nitty-gritty about that. I'm just here to talk about the titles that I enjoyed and recommend to you guys. But Bulletstorm is one of them. I remember very clearly enjoying that game when it first came out. Another game they've got here is Call of Cthulhu. The reason I recommend it, because while I enjoyed it, I was also disappointed with it. There's a bit of a backstory here with Call of Cthulhu. Do any of you remember the Sinking City? So Frogware Interactives were actually in charge of this game before they got canned and then went on to make the Sinking City. Bit of a long story behind all that, I think. But so while this was a little bit disappointing with regards to horror, or the horror genre in general, I think being part of a subscription service whereby you don't have to pay anything extra to get your hands on it. So if you're someone that has paid for PS Plus, or PS Plus Premium in this case, you have it for the online play and you have it for all these things, and this is just there. I recommend it for that reason. I don't recommend people go out of their way to buy this title, if you follow my meaning. Okay, holy moly. I nearly forgot to include a game, hence why my hair looks a little bit wild, because I just remembered I forgot to mention Child of Light. So here we go, Child of Light. I played this game last year. You know, when... was it last year or the year before? I can't remember which lockdown it even was, but there was a portion of time where... no, it was when they announced that they were going to close down the PS3 storefront and all that debacle. It turns out that I have the PS3 version of Child of Light, which I had never played before, so I downloaded it, and oh my goodness, I was so pleasantly surprised by this game. It's a 2D platformer side-scroller type thing. You play as a princess, this red-headed girl here. The art style is beautiful, by the way, and the music is next to heartbreaking. It is tear-jerking level of music. As for the actual gameplay itself, it's really quite straightforward. You go around, you collect like light, literally, hence the name, and it's almost like you're playing out a storybook fairy tale. And there's not much more I can really say. So if you enjoy games like Rayman Origins, oh my goodness, and I can't even think of other games to compare it to. While it does sit in that style, Ori and the Blind Forest, yeah, those types of games, then yeah, this is, I can't believe I nearly forgot to recommend Child of Light. This ranks so highly for me. Please play Child of Light. Moving on to D, we've got all the Darksider games, which is pretty cool. Again, they've got the remastered editions for Darksiders 1 and 2. So you've got the War Mastered Edition, you've got the Definitive Edition. I still struggle with that to this day. Darksiders 3 and Darksiders Genesis, which, although it's not Darksiders 4, it's just an excuse to get the Fourth Horseman in there. But the one I recommend out of the 4 is Darksiders 3 for sure. In fact, I think this version is actually a part of my PS Plus from free monthly games a while back. So I think if you're joining PS Plus for the first time ever and you didn't have this in your library already from the monthly games, they've now added it as a streaming game. So as you can see, I can download it because I already had it in my library from my previous subscription, but you can stream it too. And this is the one I recommend the most. I just had the most fun with it. I mean, look at Fury. She looks awesome. I really want pink hair again. It plays much like a Souls-like game. I'm sorry, I know people are sick and tired of that saying, but it is that kind of action-based sort of game. Platforming involved, collecting involved, all the good stuff that you would expect from games in general. And yeah, Fury's a sassy bitch, so that is one I recommend highly. Next up, we've got a near and dear favourite of mine, Deadly Premonition, the director's cut. So this is another streaming version, unfortunately. Like I say, I don't know how that's going to fare with people with poor connections, but the director's cut includes everything, and by that you're probably thinking, well, without giving too much away, it includes a boatload of skins for your car. Yes, you get to drive a car in this game. No, the controls are terrible. I don't really know what to say about Deadly Premonition without spoiling it. For anyone who's gotten this far in life without knowing about the game, I want to try and reserve some sort of secret regarding what a weird and wonderful game it is. But I think if you enjoy horror, you've got a sense of humour, and you enjoy pop culture references, this will be the game for you. I can't say the same for the sequel, but we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, Deadly Premonition, it's a cult classic for a good reason, and again, being part of a subscription service, why not give it a try and see for yourself. Next up, we've got Deliver Us from the Moon. I played this last year and I really enjoyed it. It's a mixture of everything. I really don't know how to describe this game. It's not a horror. It's kind of exploration, but kind of not. It's first person, and then sometimes it's third person, and sometimes you're driving vehicles. I don't know how to explain it. It's not a scary game in that regard, but it does have quite an unsettling as well as slightly sad plot line. The sequel is on its way as well, Deliver Us Mars. So it does tie, which I'm really glad, because the ending of this game definitely made me want more. But effectively you are just exploring, and it's not open world. You are literally going from point A to point B to point C to point D, but you're just trying to figure out what the heck's happened on this space station. Why is there nobody here? And I really can't say much more than that. And there's just bits and pieces along the way that you've got to pick up. So there's like archives, data logs, things like that, just to give you little snippets of what's happened. And then as the game progresses, that all builds up and creates the picture for you. Yeah, I just recommend Deliver Us the Moon. I really can't say much more than that. Demon's Souls is another game that really doesn't need much introduction. The fact that they've put the remaster remake on here is pretty cool. I would have liked them to put the original on here too, but that probably would have ended up being a streaming thing. At least with this you can just download it, so you can download and play this from the console. But yeah, Demon's Souls, again, what do you want me to say? Another game that really probably doesn't need that much saying is Devil May Cry 4. I don't really know how it performed on the PS3, because the only version of Devil May Cry 4 I've ever played is the Xbox 360 version and the special edition on PlayStation 4, which is not what this is. So I can't really comment on the performance again, but plotline and combat, if you know Devil May Cry, there's not really a lot to say. And at this point in time, I don't think there's anyone out here that does need it explaining to them. But Devil May Cry 4 does sit probably as my favourite, I think. Yeah. I think whilst we're here, I think it's worth mentioning that the Far Cry 3 was definitely the jumping on point for a lot of people who had never played Far Cry before, and it still sits as one of my favourite games. I tried Far Cry 4 and I couldn't get into it as much as I did with this one. If you enjoy large open world maps, shooting things, sneaking around, looking for resources, levelling up, as well as a genuinely good storyline, this is the game for you. It's set on a tropical remote island. You've been captured by pirates effectively, and you've got to try and just make your way safely off the island and back home, as well as try and find your friends. I tried to think of a smart word there and it didn't work. Yeah, it's really another game that needs no introduction, but Far Cry 3 is a game near and dear to my heart. And the fact that they've actually included Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon separately, I think is pretty cool, to be honest. Because not everyone necessarily wants to sit through Far Cry 3, but to play as Michael Biehn in this neo kind of weird 80s spectacular version of a Far Cry game, yeah, that's also an option. Moving on to the Fs, the Final Fantasies. They've actually got a decent selection here. So you've got 9, 7 and 8, the original, well, the remasters. They're not remakes, they're just remasters. As well as the remaster of 12, 10, 10, 2 and 15. Out of those 6, while 8 is my favourite, and that's another topic for another day, I think the one I would recommend for people to play who have not played a Final Fantasy ever before, I will always go with 10. Maybe not so much 10-2. 10-2 is an acquired taste. And there's not really much point in playing a sequel without playing its predecessor. But yeah, Final Fantasy X is, again, very, very nostalgic for me. Holds a very important place in my gaming catalogue. It's got amazing music, amazing story, not so amazing voice acting, but that's part of its charm. Actually, no, I take that back. So the voice acting is fine. It's more the voice script I think we really should be nitpicking at here. But if you enjoy traditional turn-based games, then there's not really much more I can say about it once again. Okay, so moving on to the God of Wars, I'm disappointed that they haven't included Chains of Olympus or Ghost of Sparta. But we've got the mainline games here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, Ascension, which was a prequel, and then I'm going to call it God of War 4 just for the sake of argument, but God of War Norse version. Although I recommend the entire franchise, again, it just makes sense to start with the first game. Why this is the PS3 version? Oh no, it makes sense. So this is the PS3 version. So to clarify, God of War 1 and 2 initially came out on the PS2, in case you didn't know. These are the PS3 HD versions, so these come with trophy support. I used to have them on disc years ago. Why I got rid of them, I cannot tell you. But obviously, if you're going to start a franchise, you start with the first one. Simple as that. Moving on to the H section now. Heavy Rain. I mentioned it previously when I talked about Beyond Two Souls. So this is another choose your adventure, branching paths, multiple endings, multiple outcomes, who the fuck knows kind of scenario. You do actually get to play as several characters throughout this game, but you primarily play Ethan? Is his name Ethan? I have forgotten his name. I want to say Ethan, but I'm probably wrong. Effectively, something traumatic and tragic happens at the start of the game, and from that point onwards you're playing a man who's kind of unsettled with himself, and so when something tragic happens again, becomes overwhelmed and determined to try and resolve it, as well as finding out along the way that there's branching storylines and it all ties together. It's amazing. It's like a really good TV drama, but you're in charge. It's great. So I always recommend these types of games. Not everyone likes them, but I will always recommend them. Guardians of the Galaxy, which I only recently played myself. Wonderful. It really is such a strong effort from Eidos. I just don't know what to say about this, because I do feel that potentially a lot of people have already played this. But for anyone who was reluctant, because the Marvel's Avengers game was not what they expected and were disappointed with it, this is a far departure from that, I assure you. This is a genuine single player experience with no need for extra input in terms of purchasing goodies or anything like that. You can enjoy this game from start to finish completely by yourself. It includes great music, it's got such a great design, really brilliant banter between the 5 Guardians, both the scripted dialogue as well as the chitter chatter whilst you're walking through levels. It's all brilliant, and it reminds me of just an old school traditional game. As stupid as that sounds, like what the hell would you describe that as? You're controlling one character and you just progress through the game. You go from start and you end up at finish. You have boss fights here and there. You level your characters up. You've got platforming puzzles. It's not a difficult game either, if I'm honest. It's a relatively subdued game, but I think it was designed for people to enjoy. They had that in mind. So yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy, if you haven't given it a go, please do. So I've skipped all the way down to O this time, and we've got Observer System Redux. You may or may not have heard me talk about this in my 2021 favourites. I'm not sure. Did I even talk about it? I'm pretty sure I did. This is the PS4 stroke PS5. It's basically a remaster, or I'm not even sure how to describe it. The original version of Observer, it was just called Observer, is practically impossible to get a hold of now. So yeah, this is not the original version of the game, but I'm fairly certain there wasn't a lot of changes made. You basically get to play as Rutger Hauer, which is the guy there. If you're sat there scratching your head going, that guy looks familiar, yeah, he's the guy from Blade Runner, the Hitcher, the original Hitcher. God, he was in shit tons of stuff. So before he passed away, he was in a lot of stuff, so you recognise him. He's a professional actor, got a very distinctive voice. You get to play as him. You are a detective. You're going through a apartment block. This is all in first person too, and you've been biomechanically engineered. You know, we're in a very dystopian future where getting augments and adjustments to your body via the means of technology is becoming normal, but it's also a little bit of an underground thing. It's making some people's lives worse rather than better, and that's got an implication on the story as well. But going through this apartment block, you're just trying to find out what's happened. You've been asked to go there by your son, and you're trying to figure out why. The building actually goes into lockdown, so you can't leave. It's like, why stay in this building? Why not call for backup? You're actually stuck in this building because for whatever reason it's gone into a security lockdown. And then there's also side quests you can do on the side. It kind of sits somewhere in between a first-person horror and just a general first-person walking sim. There's no combat, but there's puzzles. And there are some moments of genuine discomfort for me. I found quite spooky, and some stealth moments too. But yeah, Observer, System Redux, I really recommend that. Try it out. Now, as you can see, I've already I've actually paid for this game already, but they've included Primal. And you know what? I'm not entirely sure where the jury sits with Primal. I just have really fond memories of this. It was a game I played on the PS2 years ago, and you get to play as this cool, badass, rebel chick here. I've forgotten her name. I want to say Jen. Jen? Is it Jen? What's her name? I can't remember. Oh, an ordinary girl who has no name. It is Jen. Is Jen. And then you got Scree. He's like a little gargoyle. Anyway, how to explain it? It's a third person action. Is it action? Is there a lot of action? Basically, weird stuff happens, and Jen here has to go through different dimensions with different powers and the ability to turn into a demon type thing to fight off otherworldly beings in order to get her boyfriend out of a coma. Spoiler alert, I never got her boyfriend out of the coma. I fucked that ending right up. But yeah, it's such an odd duck of a game, but I'm fairly certain it was relatively popular at its time because this was a Sony Computer Entertainment whatever exclusive. But the fact that they've included it on this subscription, it's a game that people are very unlikely to go back and find on PS2 and try and play it now unless they already own it. So yeah, I just love Primal. Please go play Primal for me. Also, it's also the reason I kind of love 16 Volt a little bit, so go listen to them as well. So we're finally getting onto R. They've included Rain. And you know something? I can't remember Rain in great detail, but I have played it and I did enjoy it. And if I remember rightly, it's kind of it's a 3D version of Limbo and those types of games where you're controlling a character where the rain plays a significant part in whether or not you're found by enemies, and you just have to navigate through various levels. I'm not doing a great job of explaining it, but I remember enjoying it. In fact, I might even play it again just to refresh my memory, but Rain is a game that I recommend. So yeah, moving on. We're on to the Resident Evils. Does Resident Evil really need much recommendation? I'm going to say no, but this is where I'm probably going to lose a load of subscribers. I love Operation Raccoon City. I really don't care what you think of me for that because of it. There is something about that game I have always enjoyed. Yeah, okay, you can argue it's not canon. It's not allowed to be canon. Like, you shouldn't have to be able to choose between killing Leon or not. That is stupid, and I agree, it is very stupid. But I've always enjoyed just going through the labs, being part of this, like, cleanup crew. I thought that was a really clever idea. In fact, I'm surprised in all the awful iterations of Resident Evil we have seen in film and television, how this hasn't been adopted as a plotline. I honestly don't know. But yeah. Also, I actually have these downloaded on my PS3 already. But these are fun as well. The Umbrella Chronicles and the Dark Side Chronicles. They're like roller shooter things. They're fun. But in all honesty, in seriousness, out of the 9 games that are sat here, which is weird. Why only 9? I don't know. I think the one that really deserves a little bit more attention is Revelations. The first Revelations was scary as fuck. I don't care what anyone says. That game shit me up, and I will always recommend it to people who, for whatever reason, shun it. I will try and convince them otherwise. Moving on to S. This is another game that has to be streamed, unfortunately, but this is another game that I just don't think a lot of people are going to go out of their way to try out, and that is Syberia. I really don't know where to start with Syberia. It's a point and click of sorts, only you use the console, not a mouse and keyboard. You play as Kate Walker, a lawyer, a solicitor lawyer, who's flown in from the States to Europe in order to settle the affairs of one of her clients, and ends up going on a bit of a wild goose chase to find him. And I won't really get into it much more than that, but in order to get from point A to point B, Kate finds herself having to solve, puzzles, getting through, trying to get trains from one place to another, trying to just to find her damned client. And it's such a peculiar situation, but you meet some adorable characters along the way, and I just think it's quite a wholesome game. It really gets your noggin thinking. There were a few occasions where I was a little bit puzzled on what to do. But if you're if you're maybe just not into shooters or action games, you do want something that's just a little bit more slow paced and a bit easier to just sit back and enjoy, I 110% recommend Syberia. It's just a shame that the sequels aren't included on here. So we've got 2 of the Dark Pictures anthology games here, and since they're here, out of the 2, I'm going to recommend Man of Medan. Out of the 2, I think Man of Medan, even though it was a little bit longer, I felt that gave you a better experience. I always thought Little Hope was too short. Truth of the matter is, House of Ashes is the best Dark Picture so far. And as we've already pointed out, as you know by my unboxings, I love those games. So I'm not really going to spend much more time defending them. Of course, moving on to the games, we've got Last of Us Remastered, and which is a downloadable thing. I think this might be part of the PS5 collection, I'm not sure, but you've got The Last of Us Remastered and The Last of Us Left Behind. They both go hand in hand. Why they're listed separately, is a bit annoying. And again, if you've lived under a rock and don't understand what The Last of Us is, then go find a real review. But yes, of course, I recommend those. Okay, so moving on again, we have The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. This is a game I played earlier last year, I believe. Yes, last year. And it's another walking, talking, first-person experience, but it's a beautiful and crafted. I think it's Wisconsin. I can't remember what area of the states that it is, but it's absolutely amazing and it's beautiful. Or is it Winnipeg? I swear it's a place that begins with a W and has lakes. So yeah, people who have a better knowledge of geography, let me know in the comments. But this game is wonderful. I forget who you're actually playing as, to be quite honest with you. I'm gonna be on. I think you play Ethan Carter himself, but I have forgotten. But effectively, you're going through this area to try and figure out why Ethan's disappeared, and along the way you have almost I don't know how to explain it, but you get to observe and recreate incidences. You know, you'll come to what is almost a crime scene, and you get to try and put two and two together and figure out, well, what happened here, and that enables you to move on to the next area, or it gives you a clue as to whereabouts you need to go and what's happened. It's a great one. It was a good story. I enjoyed it. I really do recommend The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. Alright, we are now moving into the U's. We're getting to the latter end of the alphabet. So here we have got Uncharted Lost Legacy. I haven't played that, so I can't recommend it. But we have got the Nathan Drake Collection, which is the PS4 remastered versions of all the Uncharted games. And of course I recommend them. Again, I really don't think there's much more I can say that hasn't already been said in like reports and reviews and just general chatter on the internet. So of course I recommend the Uncharted games. Specifically, I think my favourite out of the three, so it's important to note that these are just 3 games, it's not the 4, it's just 1, 2 and 3. And you know what, I think my favourite one is 1, the first game. Yeah. And then of course we've got Until Dawn. I don't know what to say. I love Until Dawn. If you like horror games or horror movies even, this is, for me, this sets the bar for all the games that Supermassive have done afterwards. I still think that this is their best effort, that they, at times, for one reason or another, that there's just something that falls short in trying to recapture what they managed to get in this game. So again, if you like Choose Your Own Adventure, or even if you don't like Choose Your Own Adventure and make your own choices, I don't care. You should still try this one anyway. It's the best. So we're on W now, and we've got Warriors Orochi 3. So we've got a few Musou games here on this list. You may have noticed we had Dynasty Warriors, we had Warrior All-Stars there, we had Samurai Warriors put earlier in the list. But out of all the Musou type games on the list I've seen so far, Warriors Orochi 3 is the one that I think I'd be most comfortable with recommending. In honesty, I would recommend Warriors Orochi 1 or 2 were they included, but they're not. Whether or not they'll expand the library to include just PS2 games, I don't know. But Warriors Orochi 3 for me is the best. What the heck are Musou games, Vicky? What are you talking about? Please explain. So, Warriors Orochi takes a roster of characters from Japanese and Chinese legend, myth, history. It kind of mashes it all together, so you have some real genuine historical figures here, but in a fictionalized kind of capacity. So you've got like Lu Bu, like generals and captains of various dynasties from centuries ago, as well as samurai and Japanese historical figures, or at least legendary figures, depending on how you want to phrase it. You have this whole roster of people in a fictionalized situation whereby you just go through different scenarios to fight waves and waves of enemies. You get to use big widespread attacks. You're just trying to beat waves of enemies in a very stress relieving fashion, I would say. And Warriors Orochi 3 specifically kind of dialed it up. It had all sorts. I think this is where they started introducing like a crafting kind of mechanic, if I can remember rightly. But the ultimate goal is to beat the demon Orochi, like this snake lord man thing. But I'm not really doing a great justice to the description of Musou games. But again, if you've never played one before, and you've got this accessibility here, then just try it, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. But that's the one that I recommend. Moving on to our next W is Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood. Now. It's not so much that I recommend the game itself. Overall, I was slightly disappointed with this game. It had ambition, but it wasn't executed perfectly. You know, you get to play as a human and be stealthy, or you get to play as a wolf and be stealthy, but stealthier, even more stealthy. And then you get to play as a werewolf, where you just go around ripping people's heads off, which is great, which is fine, but that's all there is to the whole game. You've got like one hub area that you dip in and out of every now and then, but it doesn't really serve much purpose. And then the maps or the areas that you visit to progress the storyline become very rinse and repeat after a while. So it sounds like I'm dunking on this game, and it's only for the fact that there just wasn't a lot of variety in what the game expected you to do. And there also came a point where I think it was the final boss, it may have been on the hardest difficulty, I can't really remember, but that final boss, I was getting frustrated. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but I damn near threw in the towel. So like I say, in terms of what it actually is as a game, it's something that I think when I was younger, I would probably rant and rave about how it's one of my favourite games of all time. But now that I'm older and more mature, I appreciate that there are aspects of this game that are not perfect. But the reason I recommend you play it on a subscription service is because I do not recommend you paying full price for this like I did. So you get where I'm coming from. So if you want to give this game a go and you've already paid for this PS Plus service, then you know you've got nothing to lose. I want to briefly talk about White Knight Chronicles because while I never finished it, I remember enjoying it. I just think there was a lot to do there. So this is more in the vein of a JRPG, but it definitely cranked up what it expected of you, and I think there was a lot of grinding involved. So if you're up for the challenge of a really time-consuming game, this might be the game for you. Right, we're finally moving into the tail end of the alphabet, and here we have Ys 8. Again, it's another game I did not finish, but I was having a really good time with this. It's just another JRPG. I really don't know what I can do to explain what a JRPG is, especially when from each franchise to the next there's something different about it that makes it, but still it sits in the category of a JRPG. It's really hard to explain, but I remember enjoying Ys 8, so I recommend that you try it too. Okay, we're finally on to the Zs. Zombie. Oh, Zombie. A lot of you will remember this as Zombie U, right? This originally came out on the Wii U, and trying to use the handheld part of the Wii U to manage your inventory whilst the game was actively still running on the other screen. So if a zombie was coming at you and you were trying to do something on the pad for the inventory, you would have to break out of that in order to deal with the zombies. And because the Wii U didn't do so great, I'm guessing they needed to try and sell more copies. I don't know why or how, whether it was just due to popular demand or due to recommendations, I don't know, but they ported it onto the PlayStation console, which was great. And honestly, even with the exclusion of the inventory management being a separate mechanic of the game, they just had to tie it all in where you would check your inventory and it would be a case of being conscious that there might be a zombie coming at you. In fact, that probably made it even harder because you couldn't tell. But it is just a first person zombie survival. You get to go through London. It's almost like 28 Days Later in terms of the aesthetic and the design. and there's actually some very difficult, intense moments in here that make it quite a challenging survival game. So yeah, if you enjoy survival and zombies, and just when you think that that recipe is getting overcooked, it doesn't matter. Zombie does it well. Last but not least, we have Zombie Army 4. Again, I think I've mentioned Zombie Army 4 enough times for you to maybe know that I enjoy it. But for those of you who don't know, this is just the zombie version of Sniper Elite. So you get to do your slow-mo shooting, running around like occupied Germany, shooting zombies basically. Hitler has decided he's going to do all his occult shenanigans and raise armies of the dead to fight his war for him. And I'm fairly certain you even get a zombie Hitler at some point, but there's nothing better than a third-person zombie shooter, right? But there's something about the way Zombie Army does it that I personally love. And not to mention, there's a lot of DLC to this. Whether or not this includes the DLC, which I somewhat think is doubtful, you're getting the base game for free. So if you want to add on like the numerous things that came with it, then you can. But you can play it with friends, you can play it alone, and I love it. And it's got cool music, really cool music. And there we go, that's the end of the list. So you're probably thinking, Vic, you didn't seem to pick out a lot there. And I'm glad in a way, because what fun would it be to have paid for this service only to find that I've either played or I own everything that's on it? That would suck. So there's a good handful of games here that I have not had the pleasure of playing at all, or maybe not been able to finish in the past. And I might talk about those some other time, but all the games that I've just listed there are games that I have had the pleasure of playing, and would recommend you to give a go if you haven't before. Like I say, the ins and outs of the premium service are a separate matter for a separate day. But yeah, those are my picks. That's what I'm looking forward to playing again. And I'm hoping that maybe you'll give them a go. So yeah, that's me. See you later.